Hello, welcome back to another video. My name is Chelsea. I'm really excited for this video because I'm going to be talking about all my 5-star reads of the year so far. I was going to do this video later, like more in the summertime, but I was looking through and 5 stars, I feel like I never give out 5 stars. Like I feel like they're really random for some reason. And then I was looking through since the start of the year, which is around the same time I started this channel and doing this whole experiment, and I realized there was actually a lot more 5 stars than I thought there were. And maybe just because you read so many things and you have like 2, 3, 4 stars and the 5 stars seem really random, but I've had some really good reads. But yeah, I've had some really good 5-star series and 5-star books this year. This month alone, May, has been a really good month for me reading. So I'm pretty excited now. I put a list of books together. So now I'm really excited. And I mean, 5 stars is kind of hard to explain, at least for me, because I feel like I never give things 5 stars. But for me, it's more of like a vibes thing than anything else. I don't know if I'm necessarily thinking like these are the best books ever written or anything. Some people might not even like some of these books. Some of them are things that I like totally love, but I see like issues with them. So let's just go through and I'll give kind of a brief, just talk about them kind of briefly. I don't want this to be like a spoilery video at all. Okay, so my first 5-star of the year was actually one of the first books I read this year, and it's actually a novella, which is super weird because I feel like I never read novellas, but 6 Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. I really like Carissa Broadbent's writing, so it wasn't surprising that I gave this book 5 stars. This is a novella. It's part of her Crowns of Nyaxia series, which I really love, and I'm super stoked. There's another book that's supposed to be coming out later this year. But yeah, a novella, to me, I just never really read a lot of novellas. So when going into this, I just kind of wanted a little more backstory on these characters that are part of this larger series. And what she was able to do in such few pages was just astounding. Like, I think I was just more amazed than anything that I had to give this 5 stars. And I feel like the first book I read this year was kind of a dud, and this was like literally the second one. And I just was like so happy. And the love story in this is really great. Like for being that short, like she does such a good job with both these characters. I don't know how she got me to care about them both in so few pages. And yeah, vampire romances are really exciting. I love them. And I can't wait for more things within this world. So Lilith is our main character in this story, and she is trying to help her community. She's a scientist, and there's been an illness that's been taking over, and she goes and she seeks out Val, who is a vampire, because she thinks she can figure out a cure for the illness using his blood. So they kind of have this bargain going on. And yeah, their romance is really great, and I can't wait for more from this world, but this was my first 5 stars of the year. Okay, next we have Broken Bonds by J. Bree. I ate this up in January. I did a whole video about it. I only own a physical copy of this first book, Broken Bonds, but the Bonds That Tie series is the full series name. And I gave like most of the books of the series 5 stars and a couple of them 4 stars. But it's a 5-star series to me. I would recommend this to anybody. It's more of a paranormal romance, and it's a Why Choose romance, which is really fun. I feel like I don't read enough of those. And I've even reread a few of these books a few times recently, and I just love it. I just eat it up whenever I'm in a little bit of a reading slump or just not in the mood for anything else. Sometimes I'll just read some of these, and I just love the beginning of this series. We're following our main character, and she was on the run for several years trying to get away from her bonded group, which consists of 5 guys, and they hate her, she hates them. They're like begrudgingly having to deal with each other, and I really love that each guy has kind of their own personality, their own thing going on, and it's really fun just to see her relationship with each of the different guys. It's so different how it progresses, and it's just such a fun time. I love these books so much. I feel like this is definitely more of a vibes one than like the greatest books that I've ever lived, but I'm so glad that I found them. They're so fun. I gotta get all of them because these covers are so beautiful. Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I loved this book so much when I read it. I read it so quickly. Speaking of vampires, this gave me such big like Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibes, more than like a Twilight or like other vampire stories. This vampire paranormal romance is great. I couldn't put it down. I just wanted these two characters to get together so bad, and Allie Hazelwood's writing just really does it for me. I know she's not for everybody, but I like all of her books, and I really, really enjoyed this. And yeah, it was just such a fun, exciting read, and I really kind of want to reread it now that I'm thinking about the story again. But basically we have like a marriage of convenience trope between Misery, who is this fun, really witty, sassy character. She's a vampire and her father's forcing her into this marriage with the alpha werewolf. Like, they don't trust each other. And then, yeah, they don't trust each other at all. Vampires and werewolves are very at odds in this world. And she has a very interesting backstory, and she's trying to find a friend of hers, so there's a little bit of like that mystery kind of going on too. But the romance was great, and I loved it, and I hope we get some more from this world as well, because this was such a fun read. All right, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. And I gave this 5 stars because I love Sarah J. Maas. That's not the only reason, but it's hard not to give her books like 4 or 5 stars. And this one was just amazing because I literally love every single person in this book, besides the people you're obviously supposed to hate. Like, there's just such a big cast of characters, and I really like them. Normally when there's a big cast of characters, there's like half of them I'm like, don't care about, don't want part of their stories. I just want to get back to the people that I like. But every single character and chapter, but every single person, I love hearing about what happens to them. This was kind of the conclusion of Bryce's and Hunt's story, but there was so much other things going on. And I really like this world. This is more of a like urban fantasy setting, and it's almost kind of like a sci-fi story at times. And yeah, like I said, all these other like kind of side characters were in the forefront of this one, and I just really loved it. And I will say, like, I know not everyone liked this book, but like, and there are some definite plot holes in this story. I'm not saying this is like a perfect book or even her best book, but I was into it. There were so many just like 5-star moments, like movie scenes I could see playing out in my head, like an epic movie scene. There's just like so many from this book. It was very action-packed, and the pacing was wild, and I think a lot of people didn't like that pacing, but I loved it, that it was just constantly moving and constantly things happening. And yeah, like I said, the epic like scenes that felt like movies that were in this kind of debunk all the like smaller like plot hole things. But I just can't wait for her next book to come out, and I can't wait to have, I know it's going to be a little while, but I can't wait to have more from this world with these characters. But yes, this was so much fun to read earlier this year. So, Butcher and Blackbird by Brian Weaver. This is a little different from all the other books I feel like I have on this list. This book was everything while I read it. I think because everything I like is in this book. It's dark, it's comedic, it has a lot of like fun like tropes and kind of like disturbing things that happen. Yes, I like those things. So if you're not down for that, this is definitely one of those books I would check triggers. I believe there was a very extensive list of triggers right in the front of this book, but I loved it. I love dark comedies in general, and this one was just so fun and funny, and I really liked the romance in it as well. We're following 2 serial killers, and they kind of strike up this deal that every year they're going to kind of go after the same person. And now they're like Dexter style serial killers, so they're going back after like horrible people. So we're not like upset that they're trying to kill these people, basically, in short. And they kind of get together every year and are like rival serial killers, and then they fall in love. And it was so funny, and there's a great romance. It got very spicy, and I was just totally into this one. I freaking loved it. Okay, now I want to talk about the Magnolia Park series, and I did a vlog on this. It feels like a couple years ago, but it wasn't. It was just a few months ago. And this is an interesting series. It's a 5-star series for me, even though I didn't give each book in the series 5 stars. But the series as a whole was super addicting, and I'd recommend it because there were certain plots and characters that I really loved. And I mean, honestly, Daisy Hates is my favorite. I just want to go to London and watch all this drama unfold. But I definitely loved Magnolia Parks as the first book. And if you haven't read it yet, it kind of goes Magnolia Parks, Daisy hates, Magnolia Parks, Daisy hates, like it kind of goes back and forth. But this first book, I wouldn't say is my favorite out of the series, but I did give it 5 stars at the time, and it was super addicting. It was intense, and I really loved it, and it got me into this series that I wasn't sure. Jessa Hastings is a really good writer. I would really read anything by her. And the next book, the first Daisy Hates book, I gave 5 stars to too, and I loved this book so much. Both Daisy Hates books. The Great Undoing is another 5-star. But the whole series as a whole, like I said, you'll probably like different plots and different people. But this book was amazing, and I can't wait for the next Daisy Hates book to come out. But the whole Magnolia Park series is great. If you haven't read it yet, it's just a 5-star series. Okay, then we have Jabri again, The Crowns of Oaths and Curses. This is the first book in the Mortal Fates series. There are 2 novella books that are required reading before you start this first book, and I loved both of them. They were both like maybe 80-90 pages, super easy to read. Her writing is just, it's so digestible and so easy to read. This is more of a like traditional fantasy romance. We have Rook, who is honestly one of my favorite female main characters now. She's so strong. She's such a badass. She's a witch, and she's got so much power. She's a healer. She's just so amazing. And her like fated mate, basically, which we find out in the beginning of this story, so it's not even a spoiler, is this savage Fae prince. And I'm in the middle of reading the second book right now, and so I won't talk too much about that. But in this particular book, this is a very slow burn romance and a slow burn read, but I love it. There's so much going on. It's so like fanciful and has so many different fun like characters and beings in it. And there's just so much going on in this world. I mean, look at this. There's a lot happening here. But yeah, there's like a lot of political kind of crazy things happening, and a lot of war happening, and the story is not just a slow burn romance, but it's like one of the best enemies to lovers that I've really read, just because they really don't like each other. The Fae and the witches in general do not like each other, and he is horrible to her in this book, and she kind of begrudgingly comes back, and it's her fate to marry him, and the kingdom will be better if they get married. But there's really no romance in this book. The second one starts having it a little bit, but like I said, I'm only like halfway through that book, so not even much has happened there. Her full name is Rooksbane Evenstar. So yeah, and he's the savage prince. And like I said, their kingdom is so torn apart, and there's so much war going on, and if they can get themselves together, everything will be fine. So my next book, I don't have a copy of it yet, but it's A Kingdom, This Cursed and Empty by Stasia Stark. This is part of the Kingdom of Lies series. This is the second book in the series. The first one was called A Court This Cruel and Lovely. And I gave this second book 5 stars. I would say this is an amazing series, and the last book is about to come out literally in the matter of days, the 4th book. This is the only one I think I've given 5 stars to, but I would read the whole story. I would read the whole series. I liked the 3rd book a lot too, but I can't really talk about this book because it's the second one in a series without really talking about the first. But we get so much character development in this book, and we learn so much more about the world. And I really love the banter and the romance between our two main characters. Prisca and Lorien are just really great. Prisca's another one who is one of my like new favorite female main characters. She's so great, and I really just love how the story progressed. Because in the beginning, we have our girl who has this magic, and you're not supposed to have magic in this world. You're actually killed because you have magic in this world. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But basically, she's running away because she's kind of was caught using her magic, and she lives in this very small town, and she runs into these mercenaries, and that's where our guy comes in, and he like won't help her. And then later on, he realized she has this like time magic power that he can use for his advantage. And so he helps her hone some of these skills. And yeah, there's just so much. I don't want to say more than that because there's so much that happens in the 2nd and 3rd book in the story. The cliffhanger of the last one was pretty insane. I can't wait for this next book. But yeah, just the story, all the side characters are really great in this as well. This is definitely a 5-star series for me, even though I haven't read that last book yet. I'm so excited for it. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I haven't talked about this book yet on this channel because this is one of many books I read in May. The May wrap-up's gonna be pretty wild, I think. Just because I've had such a good reading month and I've given so many, mostly 4 and 5 stars, but a ton of new faves this month. Piranesi was one I was excited to read, but really didn't know anything about it, and I'm so glad I read it. It was such a unique and interesting book. And oh my God, I can't even like really explain it any further. It's just wild. We have a character who's in just this very interesting house, and he's pretty much all alone until you meet another character. And there's no explanation as to why he's there. We're not sure how reliable of a narrator he is. There's all these like kind of random like things, and this house is huge, like miles long. Like he hasn't even been to all of the sections yet, and there's like weird artifacts there and statues and different things that he's trying to like keep track of. And so it's just kind of this giant mystery, and then once everything happens, you're just like, oh my God. It was such a good book, and it was so wild, and I don't even want to say anything else because it was just kind of something you have to experience. And I loved the writing from the beginning. Like, it was very well told, and the writing style I loved, and just such an interesting and unique book that I think everyone should read it. It was just wild. Okay, then we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. I loved this book. This is a beautiful story. I've never read from this author. It's been someone I've been wanting to get into for a long time, and I've heard a lot of good things about this book, but I didn't really know what to expect because I thought the synopsis was really interesting, but I just didn't know how it was going to all play out. And this was just such an amazingly written book. I literally couldn't put it down. I want to read everything by this author now. It was just so well told and so intense and emotional, and I really didn't know where it was going for a while, and I just loved it. Pretty much we have Addie LaRue, and she makes this deal, and she is invisible to everybody. And she's in France in the 1700s, and we kind of go through her life because she can't die. She's invisible. She meets people and they immediately forget who she is. And so I didn't know how all that was going to play out, but it was just so interesting, and how she just goes through her life and what it like life really means, and how she like affects people and like their art, and like how you like and just kind of the bigger thought of like what it means to be alive, even though she's alive for hundreds of years, but she doesn't have any friends. Obviously, no one will ever remember her. She can't really like make it in the world. And there's just so much, it's just so great. I was just entranced by this book, and I would recommend this one. Just like Piranesi, I don't want to say too much about it. I just think everyone should read it and kind of like take it in and see what it means to them. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I've been in such a fun like romance era too. Abby Jimenez is an author that I discovered last year, and I've been trying to go through her backlist because I really love everything that she writes. Just for the Summer was no exception. It was a 5-star read for me. Justin is a new book boyfriend. Abby does such a good job of writing like real difficult, hard, like real life stuff, like kind of tucked in these sweet looking romances. And I was just in tears by the end of this book. Oh my God. Each character really like goes through it, and the romance is almost secondary a little bit, but it's still really great and very sweet. It's just such a cute, sweet book, and it's just so easy to get into her books. Her writing style is amazing, and I don't know if this is a trope, but I read this book and there was another book that had someone get sick in it. Our main character gets sick in this book, and the description of her being sick sounds awful, but maybe because I got sick just before I read this, and I was just reading it being like, I think I like when people are sick in books and someone comes and takes care of them, because she explains exactly how it feels when you're like that hopeless and you don't know what to do. And it was just so sweet. The premise of this book was so funny that I like should have known it's an Abby Jimenez book, that it was gonna hit like hit hard, but it's just this guy puts out a Reddit post that he feels like he's cursed because every girl that he dates, once they break up, she ends up, the next person she dates is like the one. And this girl sees this and, you know, starts interacting with him and is basically like, yeah, the same thing happens to me. So their plan is just to date a bunch of times over the summer. She moves, she's a traveling nurse, so she moves to his town. They plan to date for a few months and then hopefully break this curse. And then they end up just like really hitting it off immediately and like falling in love, and it's so sweet. And then there's a lot of stuff going on with both of them and their lives. But it's just such a sweet read, and I just love Abby Jimenez. So funny story about Emily Henry. I've read quite a few good romances this year, but Emily Henry really just knocked it out of the park with this one. And I loved this book from the beginning. I was immediately sucked in. I loved it in the middle. I loved it in the end. I really related to Daphne, our main character, a lot. And I loved Miles. What a sweetheart. Emily Henry is just such a good writer. I thought this book was so funny, and I just loved the dynamic of our characters, and it just made me think a lot about like life and like stuff that I've been through in my past. And it was just so great. I keep recommending it to all of my friends. It was just like a perfect 5-star read for me. I knew it kind of from the beginning. Not all of these did I start it going in being like, well, this is a 5-star. I felt it like in chapter like 2. They're roommates first, and then they're just like slowly becoming friends, and then a romance blossoms. And yeah, I just like that she kind of moved to this smaller town for a guy, so she doesn't have a lot of friends. She has a job that she really likes, but she doesn't really know the town that well. And I like that Miles is just sort of like, well, let me show you the town, let me show you things here. And then she has some other relationships and makes some friends and like is having a much better time in her life. And it was just such a great story. And I love Emily Henry. Oh boy, the Chestnut Springs series took hold of me this month as well. I feel like I was putting these off for a little while, not for any reason. I just knew they were a big thing last year. But when I read Heartless, I got hooked. I love Elsie Silver's writing. She does contemporary romances so well. Reckless was another 5-star read, but the whole series I just loved. They're in this small town. Who knew a cowboy romance would be this appealing to me? But her writing's amazing. Some tropes that I normally don't care about at all were like the best thing. She just takes tropes and just makes like the best version of that trope, if that makes any sense. I don't want to get too deep into any of these. Flawless I read last month and really liked. Then we had Heartless, Powerless, Reckless, and Hopeless. And yeah, Heartless and Reckless were definitely my favorites. Willa and Winter were probably my favorite characters, so that says a lot about why I liked these specifically. Every book we follow a different couple, and it's dual POV, and yeah, it's just her writing style is so great and so digestible, and they're in this small town, and yeah, it just has my heart. I just love these stories so much, so they were amazing. But yeah, I'm realizing a lot of my 5 stars are definitely just like vibes based, and just certain series and authors that I just sync up with and fall in love with. They're just everything to me. So yeah, it was really fun like going back through all of these. Because if you had asked me before I looked into it how many 5 stars I had this year, and I would have been like, I don't know, like maybe 5, 6. But I think I have like 20, which is like wild, and a lot of like new faves and like a lot of like great series that have more than one 5-star in them. So this was a lot of fun. If you made it this far in the video, you can leave a little shooting star emoji in the comments. And if you liked this video and want to see more from me, please like and subscribe to my channel, and you won't miss any of my upcoming videos. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next one.